Have you ever built your entire life with someone? 25 years of loyalty, sacrifice, and love, only to find out they were secretly betraying you with the people who smile in your face every morning. That's what happened to me. And when I tell you how I discovered it and the revenge that followed, you're going to understand exactly why karma doesn't always wait. Sometimes, karma needs a little push. If you've ever been betrayed, underestimated, or treated like you were disposable, hit that like button, subscribe, and settle in. Because this is one of the darkest, most satisfying revenge stories you'll hear today. I met Melissa during our senior year of college. She wasn't just beautiful, she was breathtaking. Japanese descent, soulful brown eyes, raven black hair that glistened in the sunlight, and a smile that could calm any storm. I was 6'10", a lanky engineering student who'd never quite figured out how someone like her could fall for me. But she did. We dated. We built a life together, and after I finished my master's degree in engineering, I proposed. She said yes. To kids, a mortgage, and 25 years later, we had what most people would call a dream marriage. When our kids grew up and left for college, Melissa and I became empty nesters with a solid nest egg. We'd worked hard, saved smart, and were finally free to enjoy life. Downsizing to a condo seemed like the perfect move. Less maintenance, great amenities, and a friendly little community dot at first. It was everything we imagined. Morning coffees on the balcony, neighbors waving. Hello, the kind of peace that makes you think, this is what retirement should look like someday. But then things started to change. Melissa grew distant. I brushed it off at first. After all, people in their late 40s don't exactly live like honeymooners anymore. Still, we'd always been close, intimate at least a couple times a week. But suddenly, that affection slowed to a drip, and then dried up completely. I'd crawl into bed next to her, reach for her hand, and she'd pull away. I told myself she was just stressed, or maybe it was hormonal changes. I tried to be patient, but something didn't feel right, and while my marriage was cooling, something else was heating up. The condo had a rash of break-ins. The whole refused to let us put Ring cameras on our front doors, but inside cameras? Those they couldn't stop. So I wired up every room in the house. At the time, I thought it was just about security. Looking back, it was the best decision I ever made. Weeks passed. Melissa grew colder. I asked if everything was okay, and one evening, she finally broke down. I need to tell you something, she whispered, avoiding my eyes. The air in the room grew heavy. My stomach dropped. I strayed. Just once, she said. The words didn't register at first. Strayed? Like she was some lost dog who wandered off the porch? No. She meant what I thought she meant. You cheated on me. My voice was low. Flat. Tears welled in her eyes. It was just once. But here's the thing. When someone says just once, it's almost never just once. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through the camera feeds, hours of footage, days, weeks. My thumb hovered, my heart pounding. And then, there it was. Melissa, with Brad, our neighbor. Not only that, but his wife Alice was in the room too. My hands shook as I paused. The feed, it wasn't just once, was it? I asked quietly. My voice was monotone, but my chest burned with fury. Her face drained of color. But I can explain. I'd only ever used that voice twice before in my life. Once, when I confronted a man who tried to grope my daughter. Another time, when my brother laid hands on his wife. Both times, someone ended up in the hospital. Melissa knew it, and she knew I was barely holding it together. Explain, I said. Coldly. She stumbled over her words. Brad and Alice, they said they have an open marriage. They told me it's about having different partners for different needs. They said they were training me. That eventually I'd come back to you as the woman you deserved, training her, like she was some project. I stared at her. In silence, every ounce of love I once had for her evaporating in the heat of betrayal. But instead of exploding, I smiled. Oh, I see, I said. My mind was racing. Melissa looked confused. You're going to call Brad. Put it on speaker. Tell him you're worried I might know. Invite him and Alice over tonight at 8. Say I won't be home until 9. You'll pretend you're planning how to break it to me. She froze. Do it, I ordered. Her hands trembled as she dialed. Brad picked up with a smug tone. What is it, cunt? My blood boiled. He didn't even see her as a person anymore. Melissa stammered, "Yes, sir. This cunt is afraid her husband knows what she's been doing with you and Miss." Brad sighed. Great. Just what I needed. Melissa swallowed. Maybe the best thing is for you and Miss to come by at 8 tonight. Husband won't be home until 9. We can plan what to say. Brad chuckled. Brilliant idea. We'll be there. He hung up. Melissa turned to me, shaking. Good, I said, leaning close enough for her to feel the heat of my anger. Because tonight, the real plan begins. When Brad hung up that call, Melissa sat on the couch trembling. She knew the storm was coming, and for once, she wasn't wrong. I looked at her, this woman I'd shared 25 years with, the mother of my children, the partner I thought I'd grow old with, and all I could see was a stranger who had let herself be manipulated by 2 smug neighbors, who thought they could break me down, mold her into their little puppet, and turn me into the village joke. No, that wasn't going to happen. I leaned close, listened carefully. Tonight, when Brad and Alice come over, you're going to play along, smile, laugh, nod like nothing's wrong. But here's the truth, Melissa, after tonight, you're never going to see them again. And you may not see me again either, because everything changes. Her eyes went wide. What do you mean? I didn't answer. I just grabbed my jacket and walked out the door. I drove straight to a dive bar on the edge of town, a place that smelled like stale beer and bad decisions, but also the one place I knew I'd find Steve. Steve and I went back decades. We weren't just friends. We'd been through the kind of things that forged blood-deep loyalty. While I'd gone the straight path, aerospace engineer, suburban dad, Steve had, well, let's just say he knew how to solve problems, the kind most people don't want to admit exists. When I slid onto the bar stool beside him, he raised an eyebrow. Mike, haven't seen you in months. What's up? I signaled the bartender for a beer. Took a long sip before I answered. Melissa's cheating. His eyes narrowed. With who? Our neighbors, Brad and Alice. He let out a low whistle. That's cold. And what? They're trying to rope her into their freak show. Worse, I said. They've been brainwashing her, calling her names, telling her they're training her for me, like I'm supposed to thank them. Steve's face hardened. So what's the play? I looked him dead in the eye. I want to end them, not physically, but socially, financially, emotionally. I want them to wish they never even thought my name. A grin spread across Steve's face. Finally, the old Mike shows up. I frowned. This isn't about me. Sure it is, he said. You've always been the guy who plays nice. But I remember what you were like before Melissa, in college, even in high school. You don't lose that edge. You just bury. It looks like it's time to dig it up. Steve leaned in. So here's what you need. First, information. What do they do? Jobs, reputations, skeletons in the closet. The more you know. The more ammo you've got. I nodded. Brad's a mid-level financial advisor. Alice? Works in HR at the hospital where Melissa used to be. A compliance officer. Both of them love their reputations. Always hosting little wine nights. Book clubs, acting like the perfect couple. Perfect, Steve said. Then all you need to do is show everyone what they're really like. How? He smirked. Leave that to me. But you need to keep them thinking they're in control. Tonight, when they show up, don't blow up. Let them believe you're the confused, heartbroken husband. That's when people say the dumbest things. That's when they slip. I felt a strange calm wash over me, like the plan was writing itself. For weeks I'd been doubting my gut, wondering if I was crazy for suspecting Melissa. Now, for the first time in months, I felt clarity. I wasn't crazy. I was betrayed. And betrayal deserves payback. I stayed at the bar with Steve for another hour, hashing out the framework. Record everything, audio, video, texts, create a paper trail. Document Melissa's betrayal, not for revenge against her, not yet, but as leverage, exploit Brad and Alice's arrogance, use their own words, their own cruelty against them. Wait for the perfect moment. The more public the fallout, the sweeter the justice. By the time I left, the anger that had been boiling inside me wasn't raw anymore. It was cold, focused, and cold anger. That's the most dangerous kind. When I walked back into the condo around 9, the scene nearly made me laugh. Melissa was on the floor at Brad's feet, dressed in a way I'd never seen her before, like she was auditioning for some twisted role in their little play. Alice sat smugly on the couch, wine in hand, smirking like she already won. "What the hell is this?" I barked, playing my part. Brad held up a hand like he was some kind of king calming a peasant. "Now, Mike, don't get upset. Don't get upset." My voice cracked. "That's my wife." Melissa flinched. Alice chuckled. I stormed into the kitchen, grabbed 3 beers from the fridge, popped them open. My hands shook, but not from nerves, from the thrill of what was coming. "Here," I said, handing them bottles. "Might as well drink while you explain why I shouldn't throw you both out right now." They clinked bottles, smug as ever. Brad took a swig. "Look, Mike, Japanese girls, they need a firm hand. Alice and I were just helping her get back in line. Once she was trained, we'd hand her back to you, better than ever." My knuckles whitened round the bottle. The audacity, the entitlement. I forced a bitter laugh. "So you're doing me a favor?" Alice smirked. "Exactly." I took a long drink, hiding my smile, because right then, I knew. They had no idea the noose they were tying around their own necks. For the next half hour, I let them talk, and boy, did they talk. About how weak I was. About how Melissa was happier serving them. About how soon, maybe, I'd join in. Every word dripped with arrogance, every word recorded, captured forever. And Melissa, she sat there like a ghost, tears streaking her face, realizing too late the monsters she'd invited into our home. Finally, Brad leaned back, smug as a king on his throne. "So, Mike, you've got a choice. Accept this new arrangement, or lose her entirely." I leaned forward, smiled coldly. "You're right, I do have a choice." Their smirks widened, and I just made it. The room went silent. "Enjoy your drinks," I said, standing, "because after tonight, nothing in your life will ever be the same." I barely slept that night. Melissa stayed curled up on the couch, sobbing into her pillow. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was fear. Honestly, I didn't care. The only thing running through my mind was Brad and Alice's smug faces, the way they sat in my living room, drinking my beer, telling me I should thank them for training my wife. I wanted blood, but like Steve reminded me, not literal blood. This was about something sharper, something cleaner. Reputation, status, the very things Brad and Alice lived for. The next morning, I called Steve. "They're arrogant," I told him. "So arrogant. They think they're untouchable." He chuckled. "Good. That makes them sloppy. And sloppy people leave fingerprints all over their crimes." Step 1 was already done. I had the recordings. Hours of Brad and Alice mocking me, admitting to manipulating Melissa, talking about their little training program. That was dynamite. But dynamite only matters if you know when to light the fuse. For the next week, I played the role of the broken husband. Melissa, still desperate to prove her loyalty to me, followed along. When Brad texted, she showed me. When Alice called, she put it on speaker. Every smug, condescending word they spoke was added to the mountain of evidence. And here's the thing. They loved talking. They loved bragging about how other neighbors were too weak to understand their arrangement, about how Brad's clients trusted him blindly, about how Alice could ruin anyone's career at the hospital with a single phone call. Every boast, another nail in their coffin. Then came step 2, the neighborhood.c. Brad and Alice thrived on their little kingdom, the block parties, the wine nights, the book clubs. To everyone else, they were the charming, successful couple who helped out struggling friends. Nobody knew the predators hiding behind those smiles. That's where Steve's genius came in. He created a burner social account, just an anonymous profile with no name, no face, and from there, he started dropping little hints in the neighborhood Facebook group. Anybody else notice Brad getting a little too close with other people's wives? Funny how Alice always seems to know who's in trouble at the hospital before anyone else does. Nothing direct, just whispers, seeds of doubt, and people, oh, they love gossip. Within days, I overheard two neighbors whispering on their porch. I don't know, something about Brad just feels off. Yeah, and Alice, she gives me the creeps sometimes. Music to my ears. Step 3 was the setup for the kill shot. Steve had an idea. Get Brad and Alice bragging on camera. Not just audio. Something undeniable. So, one night, Melissa invited them over again. She played her part well this time, smiling, laughing, acting like she'd come around to their twisted little world. And me, I pretended to be tipsy. Slouched in the recliner, beer in hand. Brad smirked. See? Told you he'd warm up eventually. Alice giggled. He's already halfway there. I let them talk. Let them gloat. All while a small hidden camera sat tucked inside a plant on the bookshelf, catching every second. Brad leaned forward, drunk and cocky. You know what the best part is, Mike? Once a woman's broken, she never really goes back. Melissa's ours now, and you're just the lucky guy who gets the leftovers. Melissa's face crumpled. Mine didn't. I just took another sip and muttered, guess I should thank you. They laughed. Oh, how they laughed. And the camera caught it all. That night, after they stumbled home, I pulled the SD card from the camera and drove straight to Steve's. We watched the footage together. Brad's smug grin, Alice's cruel laughter, Melissa's broken expression. Steve leaned back, whistling. Oh man, they're done. Toast, ashes. But he was wrong, because I wasn't going to burn them fast. I was going to burn them slow. The next phase was delicious. We started small, sending anonymous clips to just the right people. A short audio file of Alice bragging about ruining people's careers went to a nurse at the hospital. Within 24 hours, half the staff was whispering. A video snippet of Brad slurring about other men's wives found its way to the inbox of one of his biggest clients within a week. Brad lost 3 accounts, and still, nobody knew where it was coming from. Brad started looking tired. Alice started snapping at people. The cracks were showing. But the real masterpiece, the neighborhood barbecue. Every summer, Brad and Alice hosted the block's biggest event. They lived for it, the perfect chance to parade their success in front of everyone else. This year, though, things were different. Because 2 nights before the barbecue, Steve and I printed out transcripts of the recordings, page after page of Brad and Alice's filth, their arrogance, their cruelty, and we slipped copies into the mailboxes of every single house on the block. The night of the barbecue, you could feel the tension in the air. Neighbors smiled too wide. Whispers floated like smoke. Brad, oblivious, strutted around in his polo shirt, grill tongs in hand. Alice clung to his arm, wearing that same smug smile. But when people looked at them now, they didn't see the perfect couple. They saw predators, manipulators, frauds. I'll never forget the moment Brad realized something was wrong. He was mid-sentence, bragging about his top clients, when Mrs. Patterson, the sweetest, most polite woman on the block, cut him off. Tell me, Brad, she said, voice dripping with disgust. Does your wife know how you treat other women? The color drained from his face. Alice choked on her wine. And then the whispers turned to questions. The questions turned to confrontations. By the end of the night, Brad and Alice were standing alone in their own backyard, surrounded by neighbors glaring at them like they were trash. Melissa stood by my side, trembling, but for the first time in months, she wasn't crying. She was watching them fall. After that night, their kingdom crumbled fast. Brad's clients pulled out one after another. Alice got reported to HR for conflicts of interest. Invitations to parties stopped arriving. Neighbors stopped waving. And me? I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. The avalanche had started. All I had to do was sit back and watch it bury them alive. But here's the thing about revenge. Once it starts working, it's addictive. And as satisfying as it was to see Brad In Alice's perfect world collapse, I wasn't finished, because Melissa, she was still standing, and she still had to pay her price. After the barbecue, things moved fast. Brad stopped jogging around the neighborhood in his overpriced sneakers. Alice stopped hosting her little wine nights, their front porch. Once a revolving door of fake smiles and laughter stayed dark. But inside my house, the silence was heavier. Melissa tried to patch things up. She made my favorite meals. She sat beside me on the couch, reaching for my hand. She even whispered, "I'll do anything. Just please don't leave me." But every time I looked at her, all I saw was that night, her hand in Brad's, her smile at Alice's joke, her silence while they mocked me. Anything she said now was just noise. Steve came over one night with pizza and beer, grinning. "Brad's finished," he said between bites. "Lost his biggest client today. Word is, nobody wants to touch him. Reputation's radioactive." I smirked. "And Alice?" He chuckled. "HR sniffing around. They think she's been trading gossip for favors. Couple nurses are already calling her a snake. Her days are numbered." Good, exactly what I wanted. But Steve saw the look in my eyes and leaned back. "This isn't about them anymore, is it?" I stayed quiet, because he was right. The next morning, Melissa tried again. She stood in the kitchen, tears in her eyes, holding out a mug of coffee. "I love you, Mike. I messed up. I was weak. But I've learned my lesson. Please, just let me make it right." For the first time, I smiled at her, and that smile scared her, because it wasn't forgiveness. It was a plan. Here's the thing. I could have divorced her right there. Could have thrown her out, started fresh. But that would have been mercy, and after what she did, mercy was off the table. So instead, I decided Melissa was going to live in the ruin she helped create. Step 1. Exposure. Brad and Alice had been stupid enough to drag her into their twisted little club. That meant she was guilty by association. So, just like I'd leaked their dirt, I started slipping pieces of Melissa's betrayal into the same pipeline. Anonymous screenshots of her texts to Brad, audio clips of her laughing along while they mocked me, little details only she could have provided. Neighbors who had once pitied her started giving her the same disgusted looks they gave Brad. And Alice, at the grocery store, she felt the stares. At church, whispers followed her down the aisle. And, the best part, she had no idea it was me. Step 2. Isolation. Melissa tried reaching out to her sister, to old friends, to anyone who might still believe in her. But somehow, every time she called, the line went cold. People stopped answering, stopped texting back. Because Steve and I made sure they saw the truth first. By the time she realized it, she had nobody left, nobody but me. One night, she broke down. We were sitting at the dining table, me eating steak, her pushing peas around her plate. Finally, she whispered, "Why are they all turning on me?" I set my fork down, looked her dead in the eye. "Because they know what you are, Melissa. You chose them over me. You humiliated me in my own home. And now, everyone sees you the way I do." She shook her head, sobbing. "I was manipulated. They didn't put a gun to your head." I snapped. "You chose them, and now you live with it." She buried her face in her hands. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Meanwhile, Brad and Alice's world was collapsing piece by piece. Brad's car got repossessed. I watched from my porch as the tow truck dragged away his shiny black BMW. The look on his face, priceless. Alice was suspended from the hospital pending ethics violations. Rumor had it she was facing a full investigation. Their house, once spotless, started looking abandoned, lawn overgrown, paint chipping, lights off at night. The king and queen of the block, reduced to shadows. But I wasn't done. Because as sweet as their downfall was, I wanted one last blow. Something they'd never recover from. So Steve and I hatched the final phase, public humiliation. See, up until now, it had all been whispers, rumors, private leaks. Enough to ruin their reputations, but not enough to make it explode. That was about to change. We had video. We had audio. We had transcripts. all of it tied together in one neat little package. And with the neighborhood already buzzing, all it would take was one spark. The spark came sooner than expected. The neighborhood council, the same one Brad and Alice used to control, announced a meeting. Open floor. Anyone could speak. Steve looked at me, grinning. Perfect stage. I nodded. Time to light the fuse. The night of the meeting, the community hall was packed. Neighbors filled every chair, standing shoulder to shoulder, whispering about the scandals that had already been spreading like wildfire. Brad and Alice showed up late, trying to look composed. Brad in his wrinkled polo, Alice in a dress that looked one size too tight. But the confidence was gone. Their smiles were brittle. When the floor opened, I stood, heart pounding. Hands steady, I think, I said loudly. We need to talk about what kind of people we're letting into this neighborhood. Every head turned. Brad's face went pale. Alice clutched his arm. And then I pressed play on the projector screen. Their own words filled the room. Brad bragging about breaking other men's wives. Alice laughing about ruining careers. Melissa's nervous voice joining in. The room went dead silent. And then came the gasps, the disgust, the murmurs of monsters. Brad tried to shout. Alice tried to explain, but it didn't matter. The evidence was undeniable. By the end of the meeting, they weren't just disgraced. They were exiled. Neighbors turned their backs. Friends deleted their numbers. Clients dropped contracts. The very community they once ruled now wanted nothing to do with them. When I got home that night, Melissa was sitting at the table, pale and shaking. You destroyed them, she whispered. I poured myself a drink. Not just them. Her eyes widened. You're not finished with me, are you? I took a slow sip. No, Melissa. I'm just getting started. The night of the council meeting was only the beginning. Brad and Alice became untouchable, in the worst way possible. Nobody wanted to be seen with them. Their friends ghosted them. Their clients walked away. Their kids, the ones they used to parade at neighborhood events, stopped showing up to school because they couldn't handle the whispers. But that wasn't the part one savored most. The best part was watching Melissa. Because while Brad and Alice had lost their crowns, Melissa had lost her entire kingdom. She tried everything. She begged me to forgive her. She cooked. She cleaned. She offered me every ounce of affection she thought would win me back. But I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I didn't even cheat on her. I did something worse. I ignored her. Night after night, she'd crawl into bed and whisper, "Please, Mike, please just hold me." And I'd roll over in silence. It broke her in ways words never could. One night, she snapped, "You got what you wanted." She screamed, "Brad's ruined. Alice is finished. What else do you want from me?" I turned slowly, calm as ever. "What do I want?" I said. "I want you to feel exactly how I felt. Invisible. Worthless. Like a joke in your own home. And when you finally understand that, maybe then I'll be done." Her face crumpled. She dropped to the floor, sobbing, and I just walked past her. Meanwhile, Brad and Alice's house was falling apart, literally. The mortgage payments they used to brag about missed. Their bank accounts frozen under investigation. Brad was spotted at a bar one night, drunk, muttering about lawsuits. Alice tried applying at another hospital, but the ethics investigation followed her everywhere. Nobody wanted the risk. The power couple of the block had become a cautionary tale. And just when they thought it couldn't get worse, I gave them one final gift. See, I've been holding onto something. Remember all those late-night strategy sessions they had at my house? The club meetings Melissa joined. Well, I had more recordings. The kind you don't just gossip about. The kind you hand straight to the authorities. Fraud, kickbacks, illegal referrals. Things Alice had been doing quietly for years. I packaged it all up nice and neat. Sent it off anonymously. 2 weeks later, federal agents showed up at their door. I watched from across the street as Brad shouted, Alice screamed, and their kids cried while boxes of files and hard drives were carried out. That night, their house went dark for good. But what about Melissa? Oh, I saved her finale for last. By this point, she was a shell. No friends, no reputation. living in the ruins of the empire she helped build. One morning, I sat her down. I filed the papers. I said, sliding the divorce documents across the table. Her hands trembled. "Mike, please, don't do this. I'll have nothing." I looked her in the eye. "That's the point." She tried to fight it, tried to argue she deserved half. But remember those anonymous leaks? The ones tying her to Brad and Alice? They painted her as complicit. Her lawyer warned her, if she pushed too hard, she could be dragged into the same investigation. So she signed. Broken, defeated. I walked her to the door with one suitcase. And for the last time, I said the words she once threw at me while laughing with them. "You're just a joke." Then I closed the door. Life after that, peaceful. Brad and Alice lost everything. Their house foreclosed, their names in the news for all the wrong reasons. Last I heard, Brad was working under the table construction jobs, and Alice was living out of her sister's basement. Melissa disappeared from town. Word is, she works nights at a diner 2 cities over, looking 10 years older than she is. And me, I kept my house, my career, my dignity. People in the neighborhood nod respectfully when I pass. Steve still brings over beer and laughs about the good old days. But every once in a while, late at night, I step out onto the porch, breathe in the silence, and smile, because justice wasn't served in a courtroom. It was served here, in the same streets where they thought they could humiliate me, and I made damn sure they'll never forget it.